divide them into groupings. Oh, let me turn this on. There we go. One is suffering. Another one is a random pile. And then we have non-attachment. And then we had conviction. I won't be able to answer them all, but I'll try to overlap. But first I'm going to answer Jeff's question, who said, I saw someone skipping during mindful walking. I'm not going to say who. Is this allowed? Let's all get up and skip mindfully. Absolutely. And then I'm going to address one of the random ones first. Okay. Someone asked me to say a few words on the teaching, take what is given. So on Vipassana retreats, typically, I don't know whether I should take that my glasses work when I'm looking at this, but when I look at you guys, it's kind of like a fog, or whether I can see you all clearly, which I love, and this is foggy. I can just do this. Yeah. This is my new thing. I tried progressive lenses. I failed at them. Now this is my new thing. So taking what is given is a teaching on Vipassana retreats. And it is referring to the fact that many things happen that aren't our favorite. Having beds that we're not comfortable with, food that's not our favorite, a yoga kind that isn't what we want, teachings that aren't what we want, a schedule that isn't what we want. And so taking what is given is just really a teaching in non-reactivity. That's a teaching in non-clinging. And so, I can't say how many times I've been on retreat, and for me, the thing I've had to work with always is the food. I don't know, it took me a number of retreats before I stopped being in resistance to the particular brand of food that Spirit Rock provides. Too spicy, too this, too that, stomach upset, blah, 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 blah. Oh, and then they would, they have the special foods table, but all the good stuff would be there, like the watermelon and you know that, right? You know, the cantaloupe would be there. The non-spicy things like just sweet potatoes without, like jalapeno sauce on it would always be there. And my mind would just rant and rave about, I didn't want to take what was given, right? And that was just a teaching. So that's what that means. Was that helpful? Yeah. There we go. I'm going to put them in there. I answered ones. Okay. Okay, let's get down to it. Definition of conviction. A strong belief or firm persuasion about something. It describes both the act of being convinced and the state of believing deeply in a truth or principle. For example, she spoke with conviction about equality. That kind of is what we've been talking about, right? So let's see what these questions are. I may need a deeper analysis or definition of conviction. That's one. Can you elaborate on conviction in layman's terms? Is it something you want to better yourself? Can you explain differences between convictions and striving? I find it blurred sometimes. How do you cultivate steady conviction when meeting up with unworthiness to practice, feeling separate, or burdening doubt? So I'm going to answer this one first. If we recall working with conviction is in that second link, 12 little links, that one, the liberative one. And that one requires the poisons to be subdued. So if one is feeling, a significant amount of unworthiness, feeling separate or having a lot of doubt, those would be the poisons. And we'd want to work with those first with antidotes to them, all of the kinds that we've been talking about, before we then could turn more devotedly to conviction. Does that make sense? Poisons first, and then conviction. So we'd be in the, now I'm so like foggy people. We'd be in the upper circle, in that steps 6 through 9, where we have craving and clinging and becoming. So all of these things, doubt, feeling separateness, all of these things are related to clinging or resistance. So we have to work with that first before we're freed up enough to move on to the 12 links of liberative dependent origination. So does that help? Yeah? Good. No, that's the non-attachment one. Okay, explaining the differences between convictions and striving. Somebody thinks it's blurred. Okay, so let's just go back to that. This AI, it's not what the dictionary, it's AI gave me this. This AI definition is pretty much the same thing as the kind of conviction we've been working with, right? Pretty much. A firm persuasion about something, the act of being convinced, and the state of believing deeply in truths or principles. That's what we're doing. The thing that's added, that we keep adding in our work, is it's not blind faith. It's based on study and practice and reflection. So striving, on the other hand, is a kind of wanting that causes suffering. So when we have conviction, it's just a deep belief, right? Just a deep, steadfast belief in the whatever the principle is. There are, in some cases, and we spoke about this in the talk, that you could have strong beliefs in something and then have those destroyed, right? In a dark night of the soul, everything you thought you believed in, could be shaken. I suppose that could happen to us on the Dharma, we could go through something where, all of what we believe and have experienced could be shaken up. I guess we'll see if it happens, But there's really quite a difference. Striving is clinging, right? It causes suffering. Conviction is a path to freedom, right? Conviction brings sort of gladness, energy, discipline, encourages us to keep practicing. Clinging and striving causes suffering, and that could turn us away from practicing, right? Does that make sense? That helps. Elaborating on conviction in layman's terms, here's a layman's term. This example: she spoke with conviction about equality. Yeah. We've all spoken with conviction about things, right? That's a layman thing, I think. Is it something you want to better in yourself? Well, this retreat, we've been talking about the advantage of conviction and how it nourishes practice, right? How it supports the energy to practice, how it, keeps us going through dry spells, how it can remind us of times that practice has worked. So conviction, we could call it a skillful heart state, or we could say conviction is skillful means to an end. In terms of bettering yourself, or something that you want to improve in yourself, languaging like that, better and improve in yourself, it might slide into clinging and striving a little bit, right? So that word better to me always implies, well, not better. You know what I mean? There's kind of a duality. I don't know exactly what was intended in this question, but is it something you want to better in yourself? I will say that conviction is something you want to nurture in yourself rather than make better. Does that make sense? Languaging wise. I may need a deeper analysis and definition of conviction. Do we need more? All right. Let's go to the random one. Oh, I'm saving that. That's a big one. Robin, what was the show you VPN'd from another country? Several, actually. One is called Mystery Road. Anybody ever watch that? It's an Australian amazing kind of detective thriller. I like Australian shows, and they usually don't come out for a couple of years. So I'll watch one, and I'll be like, oh, Sam and I are cousins. And Death in Paradise also. Okay, concept of causes and conditions. How do we not mistakenly thinking that, that we're thinking we can create them? The chicken or the egg, right? Am I creating a cause and a condition? Well, that is really a profound question that you could go to a 30-day retreat and hear a Dharma talk every night on that. But the way that I like to talk about it is to consider that we have actually a little bit less free will than we think we do until we've begun practicing the Dharma, because then we can pause and choose, right? So much of the time, most of us in our lives are really just on automatic pilot, reacting. And those reactions are coming from causes and conditions. Causes and conditions are things related to our biology, the way we were raised, what kind of training we have in emotional regulation, our personality, all of those causes and conditions dating back. There's a beautiful story by Thich Nhat Hanh. Some of you know it, but I'll tell it again because from my point of view, it just epitomizes the deep understanding that we can have about causes and conditions. So there was, maybe in the 1970s, there were these sea pirates. There were people fleeing Vietnam, and there were sea pirates who would attack families in their boats and take all of their belongings and do grave harm. And there was a story of a 11-year-old girl who threw herself into the ocean and drowned after she watched the sea pirate kill her father and rape her mother. And Thich Nhat Hanh had heard that story and was filled, of course, with rage. Being a Zen master, went and sat with that for a while, really worked with compassion, loving kindness, equanimity, and came to write that beautiful, beautiful poem, Please Call Me by My True Names. Really describing, the insight that he gained, that if he were raised in the way that the sea pirate was raised in villages where women were treated like chattel, used and abused, where theft and injuring people, sociopathy really was cultivated and nourished. Tai was even able to say that he too would have been a sea pirate. So that's this profound insight that a Zen master has. You think a Zen master would be able to go, I'm above that, right? But no. So, or you can think of it, if you think of a fire, for a flame to continue, there have to be causes and conditions, right? A flame to burn needs wood, and it needs to be dry wood. It can't be wet, and there might need to be some wind depending on what kind of flame we're talking about. That flame needs like wax, but it needs fuel of some kind, right? And the flame lasts as long as the causes and conditions are present for the flame to exist. And when the causes and conditions are gone, the fuel is gone, it rains, the flame dies, right? So the flame is a function of causes and conditions. It cannot exist without those causes, and it cannot exist alone, We can't. We're all just a function of causes and conditions, dating back to, way back into to time began, right? Causes and conditions related to our human stress response. We don't have free will over that, That's our caveman brain, dating way, way, way back. That caveman brain is the source of all kinds of reactivity, all reactivity, I would venture to say, right? So we have very little control on that. Once we start practicing, again, we have that pause, but in general, not so much. Does that help, I hope? A little bit? Okay. I don't know who answers these things, but that's the one I'm waiting on. Okay. Oh, I don't know. All right. Should I be seeing any visions during meditation? Absolutely not. It means something is really wrong with you. What?
We'll call 911. Yeah.
No, anything can happen during meditation, and we treat visions as any other phenomenon, like a thought or an emotion or a sound. We were hearing today that somebody has perpetual music in their head, that too, that too. So we relate to any phenomenon as something to be noticed, disidentified with, and investigated. Now, if visions are painful and terrifying, that's a whole different thing, right? If that's the case, then probably talk to somebody about it. Yeah. All right. I have to think about it. I'm going to answer this one, but I have to think about it. Okay, here's the question. Can you help make the connection between the concepts learned on this retreat to basic goodness? Or the Buddha within us? The Buddha within us. Oh, I love this. Well, the Buddha within us is really our basic goodness, right? So concepts on this retreat involve purifying the poisons, right? When we purify the poisons, we become the Buddha, right? When we're working in that way, just the way he did, just the way he did in his spiritual journey, coming to see that all that suffering caused by the poisons, and then he purified them, right? So we are doing that work, and each time we work more and more on this purification, we become more and more like the Buddha. So that would be that one. Now, basic goodness, actually, some of you know how much I love that concept, but that concept is not originally a Buddhist concept. A Tibetan teacher invented it, and it's been kind of appropriated into Buddhism. But the way I would say this is that this idea that we all have basic goodness just because we're human, just because we hold a door open for somebody, just because we listen to birds sing and feel happy, just because we don't like to see people who are cloudy, just because we laugh, because we cry, right? Because we are all basically good. And we all struggle with the poisons too, right? And in our work with these poisons, our desire not to suffer, that's part of basic goodness too. Our desire to be well, to be happy, that's all part of basic goodness. So that's what I would say to that. So now I'm going to find yours. Catie has a beautiful answer to one. This is not working. And then it's magnetic. So things like attached. Everywhere I go, things are these are like just like a week old, you guys.
A little extra decoration.
Oh, here it is.
Oh, thanks. My turn. Okay. Thank you. You have to turn on. Okay.
Do you want this one?
Oh. Can you turn yours on? It might. There we go. Okay. My question is there a difference between clinging and wanting and loving? If so, what's the antidote for love? I read this and my heart just melted. I was like, aw, love it. So, loving is a feeling and an action. And when I think about love, there's wholesome love. Like when we were talking about the striving versus the conviction, there's wholesome conviction, and then striving creates suffering. So similarly to the answer that Robin gave about that, there's wholesome love, and then there's attached love that might have striving as a part of it. So when I think about the feeling of love, I think about hugging my son. And that moment when he comes home from school, give him a hug, his cheek comes up against my cheek, and you just get that warm feeling, all is right with the world. I know I'm getting a hit of oxytocin from that cheek. Which now just has like the whisper of little, man, hair on there. And that moment, that is wholesome love. That's pure love. And then I think, he's going to grow up. He's not going to hug me anymore. Uh-oh, a virgin. How can I just hold on to him a little bit longer? Clinging. And he's like pulling away. Mom, I got to do homework. Oh no! Fear, clinging. And now I moved into suffering. So that beautiful moment of this pure, wholesome love has now become clinging and this attached love. So we were talking about one of the poisons. It's greed and attachment, right? And so this attached love is like, no, come back. You don't need to study, just hug your mommy. And that's now me suffering. And it's not really being generous to him either. So that's kind of the feeling of love, and the action of love. You can do loving things. So because I love my parents, was trying to get a second caregiver for my mom. That was a loving thing to do. But then I attached ego to that. I'm a good daughter. And so when they canceled the appointment that I worked on for 2 weeks, I was irate. And I had to work with this all weekend until I had the moment of realizing this is suffering. And really the suffering is because I want to make sure that bad things don't happen. I'm afraid. I also want to just maintain the identity of being a good daughter, because if something bad happens, what are people going to think? Right? So this is now my ego attachment, and I'm anxious about this caregiver appointment because of myself. And actually right at the moment, nothing's wrong. So she's safe. We can renegotiate. We can reconnect and be loving first. And then I can manipulate my way back getting them to take this freaking appointment. But truly, I was going to jeopardize the loving relationship, because I was like, what you just don't want to know what you to do. And I'm sure you can relate if you have kids too, or spouses or bosses, or, just sometimes just people we love, why don't they just listen to us? Right? And so that's when we've crossed over to suffering, that ego attached love. That's not love, it's clinging. Hope that helps.
I'm going to put it in the bowl. Let's do this again. Striving has served me well in achieving goals. Since striving is a poison, is the goal to not have goals? These are really fun, I told you. I told somebody how much fun these are. Because you guys are so great. The questions are so spot on. So there's aspiration and intention. And with aspiration and intention, I can attain my goals. Also, with striving, I can attain my goals. When I strive, though, I'm suffering. There's I need to do it. I need deadline. I better do it. There's striving. There's suffering. And then if I don't attain the goal, or maybe I work so hard to attain the goal because of fear, right? So that's all striving. Aspiration and intention actually make goal attainment easier and more free, and there's no suffering. We can aspire to something wholesome, something good, but not be striving for it. So I think the difference is that in language, you know what? When I read this earlier, I was going to look something up about it. Dang. Well, there's a quote from the Buddha that has to do. One of his students asked, "What's the difference between wholesome striving and unwholesome striving?" That's what we're talking about. So his answer was something about rowing back and forth on a river, and the motivations, and then getting to the river, and then on an ox cart, because his stories always had ox carts in them. I don't know, but the moral of the story is, if the striving leads to wholesome states of mind and heart, then it's considered wholesome striving. And we're not saying if the striving leads to goals, right? We're saying if the striving leads to wholesome states of mind and heart, loving kindness, joy, gladness, tranquility. You may have some goals attained too, but it's what's here in the heart mind, right? If the striving and the efforting leads to unwholesome states, like, oh my God, I better do it. There's a deadline I need to accomplish. I need to get a straight A in parenting. You know what I mean? You might get a straight A in parenting, right? But you'd be suffering along the way. Yeah. Does that help? That's the one I'm waiting on. What are the main differences between core values and core beliefs? And do the core beliefs distort our inner clarity? Core beliefs, as many of us know, are generally thought of as distorted beliefs. Usually developed in childhood or over some kind of period of time, like I need to be perfect to be loved, or something's wrong with me, or love will always die, or we all know our core beliefs here in this room, right? So those distort our inner clarity. They would be like muddying the water for sure. We can't see ourselves at all if we're looking at ourselves through that kind of a core belief. And these core beliefs always are influenced by the poisons, right? And they're usually old core beliefs coming from when we're young, when we actually really did need. We needed love, we needed approval, we needed belonging. That then what happens in adulthood, what we needed when we were little, there's now still a feeling that I need approval. Right? That's clinging. Right? I need people to approve of me. Whereas as a child, when children are growing, they actually do need unconditional love and approval to grow in a healthy way. But as adults, we have to put away childish things, right? But that core belief is still in us. So yeah, core beliefs distort our inner clarity for sure. Core values, I think are an entirely different idea. I value my practice because it brings wholesomeness, right? I value honesty because I feel congruent and authentic. So it brings wholesomeness. I think values are wholesome usually, unless we value stealing things. I don't know, stealing valuable things. I don't know. That's not one of my values, right? But usually when we're talking about values, there are things that for us feel wholesome. Whereas core beliefs are not at all wholesome, and they're related to the poison. So I hope that helps. This is the suffering pile. I'm going to open several because they overlap. I'm going to lay them all out here. They're not all going to fit. Glasses. How could we speak to ourselves in moments of ignorance or forgetting when we have reacted with intensity? So that's suffering, right? Reacting with intensity is suffering. That's why I put it in the suffering pile. So that we don't punish ourselves for not having remembered to not be reactive. That's like not wanting to not be born again, or some kind of thing like that. So what I would say about this is what's needed first with suffering is not fixing it. So when we've reacted with intensity, there we have suffering. Maybe it's coming from the poison of forgetting or ignorance. But the first thing we have to look at is that clinging right there, right? That there's a want to respond properly. There's a want to not punish ourselves, right? And we want to do a little work before that, and the work would be to recognize clinging or resistance to the fact that you reacted. Anybody ever feel that way? They cling or they resist. Oh God, that was awful. Does anybody do that? God, that just happened to me the other night. Like, right? I had a reaction and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't sleep like all night long, right? So when we react, we're against it, right? Because we want to be good, we want to do good, so we're kind of against that, and we recognize that resistance right there. That's the poison. That's suffering, right? So we want to work with that part of it. And so there's a poison, right? Resistance. So then there's loving kindness. So, I was so awful, that was horrible, I did that. Loving kindness, self-compassion. You see the antidote. So we're not doing self-talk right now, like talking to ourselves. Mindfulness is not a self-talk thing. It's not a self-talk thing. We don't address that here, right? There's all kinds of other places where we can learn positive self-talk and talk to ourselves differently. But this work that we're doing is way, way earlier than it happens sort of below our need to talk better to ourselves. So when we do this work, self-talk doesn't even really become an issue, because when I practice loving kindness, again, as a response to my aversion, I feel better. I'm like, do you guys experience that with compassion last night? I just feel better. I don't then have to tell myself things, right? It's just not working out well. So that's the first thing. So lots of self-compassion. What do I need? What do I need? Do you need to apologize? Do you need to make amends? Do you need to forgive yourself? Right? These are all kind of heart states and compassionate actions. So you can ask yourself that as well. But that punishing, the bottom part of that was so that we don't punish ourselves for not having remembered. And that punishing ourselves, that's coming directly from aversion, from being, against what we did. Yeah, so we work with that. Loving kindness could be self-compassion. It could be actually trust, right? Trust in my basic goodness too, right? We make mistakes, we react, but we're all basically good, right? So I hope that helps. How does delusion show up in our lives and cause suffering? What specifically does it look like or refer to? Yeah, so delusion is referring to, I'm going to change the word to ignorance. I'm going to go a little bit further and use the word not knowing. Delusion is a word the Buddha used. It's very dramatic. It's very dramatic, I'm telling you. In our day, we use like the phrase not knowing, being ignorant, not understanding, right? And if we thought of it that way, not understanding shows up all the time in our lives and causes suffering, right? When I beat myself up, right, I'm not understanding. I'm not understanding that the source of my actions that I beat myself up for had causes and conditions. And whatever I did that I'm beating myself up for, it wasn't me. I'm not saying I'm not taking responsibility, but it wasn't myself, right? So we identify with our actions, and we get pretty down on ourselves. And I'm not saying we shouldn't have regret and work on being the best people we can be or make amends. It's that beating ourselves up situation that comes from forgetting about, let's say, anatta, not self, right? If I am having a bad thought about somebody, like a judging thought, and I beat myself up, I shouldn't have that thought. Does anybody do that? Anybody ever think, I shouldn't, I. But, that thought is not you. The brain made it. The brains here, all of these brains make thoughts. I just hate to break it to you. You don't make your thoughts. You have no control of them. So they're not you, right? So we might forget that. That would be an example of ignorance or not knowing. When I'm blaming myself and judging myself for having a bad thought, I'm forgetting the teaching of not self. Does that make sense? It's forgetting. Or here I am like, really righteously upset about something, and I might be forgetting that the cause of my suffering is clinging. Right? I'm causing it myself by clinging, right? And I've forgotten that. I'm like, blaming somebody else, right? So, right, hope that helps. We don't have a lot more time, but we might be getting...
So sorry, I have to go.
Okay. Catie has to go.
Sorry.
Talk soon.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Okay. Are we good? We have a couple more? Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay. I think they're really interesting, but if you're done with them, we can stop. Right? Okay. All right. I've been noticing a fear response and trying to work with it using the hindrance teaching to dilute it. Is fear part of hate and aversion? And I am using self-compassion. Is that right? I think self-compassion is always right. I don't think it's ever wrong. So, yes, it's right. Fear is generally a form of aversion. That can't happen. I don't want that to happen. I don't want to be late. I'm afraid of being late. That's aversion, right? I don't want to die. That's aversion. It could be little, it's all aversion. So fear, yes, is aversion. That was the question. Fear can also be clinging. We could cling to not losing something. Right, so we could be afraid of losing something that we cling to. Right, so fear, can have flavors. It could be a concoction of poisons. So to dilute it, this is very wise. Somebody's noticing fear and working with it using hindrances. Self-compassion is a great help with that. Trust, in this case, would be a lovely one too. Trusting that you'll get past it, trusting that you'll navigate your way through it, and always loving kindness. So Yeah, it's a very wise question and wise action. Okay, I just want... Oh, okay, this will be our last one. I can't do them all. All right, guidance on what to do when using a moment of suffering as a doorway to liberation, but investigation stalls or comes up short. This is, you guys, they're good students, don't you think? I mean, these questions are very wise. Obviously, we're learning something this weekend. Listen to that language. Investigation stalls or comes up short. So my answers would be, how long did you investigate for? And part of your investigation can be asking yourself, what is the source of my suffering? What is the source of my suffering? Or it could be, what am I clinging to? What am I resisting? Right? So that piece of it is remembering wisdom, right? Now, sometimes when I forget that all the time, but that's when you would reach for the support, the external supports. So say I'm floundering, I'm investigating, I'm doing all of that, I'm forgetting, right? I'm forgetting that suffering is caused by clinging, but I might turn to the teachings. I might read or study, I might be inspired to talk to somebody. Right, talk to a teacher, right, and be reminded, right, because that's what we need sometimes. We need to be reminded. I mean, the antidote to ignorance is being reminded, right? Being taught, conviction, right, too. So, but the main thing is, how long did you investigate? Sometimes we have to investigate longer than we think. And while you're investigating, you can ask yourself, what is the source of my suffering right now? And you can ask it over and over and over again, and the answer will usually show up. Oh, I don't want this to happen. And then when that thought happens, I don't like this. I don't want this. This is awful. You might recognize the resistance or the aversion in that. Or you might not. But eventually you'll find your way to wisdom because you'll talk to somebody about it. All right, so we have to stop, you guys. It's 10 till 9. I'm actually just going to have a sit for about 10 minutes.